How much money would you need for the next 20 years to live well
That
into your late 80s?
that's a good question.
You don't have to declare publicly on this podcast.
Yeah, but
I'm asking you the question
yes, and
because
we've had that conversation.
okay.
He said we need this, but we don't need anywhere near what the whole value of this operation's worth.
Right. Okay.
And if we want that, then we put a for sale sign out into the driveway because it's next to impossible for the next generation to.
Well, and same with us. You said you were intrigued with our 5,000-acre seed farm here in
Sure.
southwestern Manitoba, Canada. Our land alone, Walt, is 20 million. Like our son could never afford to buy that, or our daughter. So I want to ask you how you and Ellen have beat procrastination. You didn't keep putting on making these plans, Walt. You said 18 months. You said you've used outside advisors, you had Zoom calls, you had appointments. I want to know why you didn't just push that away.
'Cause I had a great model.
Okay.
My
Who is
parents,
good.
especially my dad, both of them are great. My mom passed away 3 years ago. Sorry. My dad's 90, still
Wow.
tends the farm every day, eats lunch less
Wow.
5 days a week. Sorry.
No, but what joy
Yeah.
you give him, Walt. What joy you give him because he showed you the way, he made a way for you, and
Yeah.
they also didn't leave you in chaos.
Nope.
Yeah.
And they literally, I was in college, my senior year. They came visit me and they said, "We want to talk." Their manager of 20 years had just resigned.
Oh boy.
And my dad had a major health event a couple years prior to that, and almost didn't make it. Honestly, got through that, and they were at the point. There's a 32-year gap between us and age, so not that they were old, but they were thinking about if I were coming back, what was their plan,
Yeah.
And they said, "Are you coming home?" And I said, "Do you want me home?"
Welcome to the Farm Family Harmony podcast. I'm Elaine Fraze, Farm Family Coach, here with another episode full of transition tips, tactics, and sometimes hard truths to get harmony on your farm. Hello, everyone. It's Elaine Fraze, Farm Family Coach, wishing you a happy new year of 2026. Where have the last 26 years gone? I can remember Y2K and when people were really afraid of what was going to happen in 2000. And here we are now, 26 years later. So today I have a very special guest. His name is Walter Moore. And Walt has a beautiful dairy farm, which I happened to take a good look at on his amazing video that shows how he does dairy farming in Pennsylvania. And to that end, I am going to be joining Walt and a bunch of other great dairy farmers in Pennsylvania at their dairy summit on February 4th. So you're hearing this now at the beginning of January, and we'd like you to spread it farm-wide, because what Walter and I are going to talk about is discuss the undiscussable, tools for talking about transition, and especially what dairy farmers maybe should be talking about but aren't really getting to the table to talk about. But before I do that, I have a bit of bio on Walt. So he's president and general manager of Walmoore Holsteins Inc, and the family farm has been in operation for over 116 years. I think I saw that it was established in 1909. There's 5 generations there. Walt is in partnership with his wife, Ellen, and 3 fifth-generation partners, Luke, Andrew, and Chase. So Walmoore Holsteins milks 1,150 cows, and you can go on YouTube and see how they do that. It's fascinating. There's lots of computers involved and really good practices for keeping the cows safe and clean as they're producing really high-quality milk. They also have replacement young stock, about 900 of them, and 150 Wagyu beef crosses, which is a very special kind of well-marbled meat that people really enjoy. They also happen to manage 17 full-time and part-time people, and they also have a Mucho milk transportation company, and their son Jake and his wife have Moore Meats. And Walt, you've also been on a lot of focus groups with Land of Lakes and been a Horizon Farm Credit Customer Advisory Board person. I don't know what you do besides dairy farm, volunteer, and sleep. So Welcome here.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to be an guest. I do enjoy Penn State football. Also have season tickets to that. I get to a few games a year, so that's always fun.
That's good. You've got
Every once in a while, take my gun for a walk too. So
yeah, and you would totally love my son because he would take you out to our back 40. We have irrigation reservoirs, and he took Ruby and Reed, our middle granddaughter who's 6, and his son Reed who's 5, hunting, and they just sat and waited in the shack, and there he was. The buck arrived.
beautiful.
And then Ruby said, "Well, Daddy, I want to know what's inside the stomach." And she's got a very scientific mind, and so very teachable moment. You cut the stomach open, and there you go, right? All that
Nice.
interesting biology happening. I think being a farm kid is a huge privilege and a great learning ground, right? And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, so you've done a great job, Walter, of innovating on your farm and adding more businesses. Like your milk trucks are your own milk trucks taking your milk for processing, and you've got the beef operation and stuff as well. And you've been involved in dairying for a very long time. So I'm coming, and I got this dairy cow just for you. I use talking sticks, and my regular talking stick is actually Beanie Baby Ox, but for dairy farmers, I found this one. So I always talk about there's a bull in the middle of the room, Holstein bull, regular ox kind of bull, just to say that there are certain things that farm families in transition are not talking about. And so tell me what's happening in Pennsylvania and what you're seeing and what is stressing out the founders and the next gen in terms of keeping these dairy farms profitable and robust for the next generation. What do you think they need to be talking about?
Well, I think it's widespread. I see families that I think are very functional, very communicate very well. Pretty obvious that, the previous generation helped, I'm going to say my generation get going, and they've grown their businesses, and the ones that have been, for the most part, successful at are looking to the next generation, and they've got a plan and they're working together. And I think it was critical that the previous generation, they need to get what, they've worked hard. They need to get their retirement out of it. They need to be able to live, but most of them want to still be involved at some level. But they need to be able to kind of get out of the way and let the next generation run with it. And I think that hopefully that model is passed along, and then they can do that with the next generation, and say, hey, I had this opportunity, you know, let's try and give that opportunity to the next generation, and their dreams aren't going to be the same as, I guess were the previous generations. And
Right. Different is not wrong. It's just different.
right. And things, I mean, gosh, the things that change. I mean, I often say, I didn't even do this 10 years ago. I didn't know about this 10 years ago. Things are, and that just, in this world, we all know that just it goes faster and it changes faster. And I think that it's hard to look in a crystal ball and,
I know. I think what you said, though, is really important is around the ability to have good communication. And for dairy farmers, there's a lot of, I mean, I know you love your cows. I had a dairy farmer one time phone me, he says, Elaine, I can't stop crying. And I said, Charlie, the reason you can't stop crying is because you've sold your cows and you loved your cows
right.
and you have grief, you have loss. And I think from my coaching experience with a lot of dairy families is obviously the work is always there 24/7. The animals are deeply cared for and good practices, best practices for cow comfort and all those good things. But what I would like to know is how do we help older founder dairy farmers, particularly men, Walt, not just be tied up in their identity as dairy farmers, but give them the grace that there is going to be a role for them on the dairy farm going forward. And I know retirement is a horrible word for most farmers because they feel like they're being pushed off the farm.
Right.
So I'm really big on what kind of language we choose. So tell me what stepping back without stepping away would look like for you in the next 10 years, because you're not yet 60. I'm almost 70, and our son has taken over our business in terms of being the main manager. But what discussions need to happen on dairy farms to help get that management team, the next gen, up to speed so that the founders can step back without stepping away? What do you think needs to happen?
Well, I think that for us, we're in just about finished our second year with these fifth generations. We brought three in the same time.
Mm-hmm.
They're very Walmoore Holsteins just in general does not own any real estate. It's the cows, it's the equipment, it's the inventories and payroll, does all the bill paying, all that stuff. It leases ground from whether it's a related party or a non-related party. So, that's how we generally function. Okay. Just
You have access to land, but you don't necessarily own everything.
give as a backup. And it's really literally, no pun intended, the cash cow. That's where all the money's generated. So, can it, it needs to be able to pay the feed bill and pay for the crops and the fertilizer and pay the rents and, all that at the end of the day and come out, with a few extra bucks every year. And, so we can keep growing this thing. Right. And so that's, to me, that's where I basically got in on it. We formed Walmoore Holsteins Incorporated with my parents. They were sole proprietors prior to that. And that's when we formed that. I had some cows and equity and we got started. And after a while, I started taking on getting land and things like that. But that was after, we're turning dollars and being able to do those things. And so that's basically how we're started. And we got advisors, my mainly accountant and our lawyer that we've worked with for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lawyer that's really specialized in farm transfer.
Understands farm transfers. Yeah.
Yep. And so, gosh, my wife and I 18 months of meetings, conversations, Zoom calls, whatever, just
Mhm.
trying to, start off with what are our goals, right? We've got 30 plus years in this thing. I have my entire life growing up, but I mean, as full time, managers and owners and, so what do we want out for retirement, and what are our goals? And both my wife and I align that we want to see this thing continue to the fifth generation and beyond, hopefully. And we can't, we don't have the crystal ball, but we want to set that
So,
generation up for success.
so one of the things important to you is legacy, that the dairy continues on to the next generation.
Right.
When you and Ellen were sitting down and looking at what you want as a couple, I have three questions for you. What do you and Ellen want? How much money do you want to spend just on family living? How much money would you need for the next 20 years to live well
That
into your late 80s?
that's a good question.
You don't have to declare publicly on this podcast.
Yeah, but
I'm asking you the question
yes,
because,
we've had that conversation.
okay,
He said we need this, but we don't need anywhere near what the whole value of this operation's worth.
right. Okay.
And if we want that, then we put a for sale sign out into the driveway because it's next to impossible for the next generation.
Well, and same with us. You said you were intrigued with our 5,000-acre seed farm here in
Sure.
southwestern Manitoba, Canada. Our land alone, Walt, is 20 million. Like, our son could never afford to buy that, or our daughter. So back to your income question, and why I'm asking you specifically, because the people listening to this very often go, Elaine, I have no idea where to start. I feel so overwhelmed. What do we need to talk about first? And I said, well, the first thing you need is you need to have a talk with yourself. So Walt, you know what you want. Ellen knows what she wants. You came together over these 18 months with a lot of advisory calls and with your family to figure out, where is that income going to come from? So is all that income going to come from Walt Moore Dairy, or is it going to also come from other investments that you've made?
Yes.
Yes and
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. I mean, we've been smart as we've gone along. We have, first of all, Walmoore Holsteins has had a simple IRA in place for at least 25 years. Ellen and I have, from our own salaries contributed to that. For the last several years, we've contributed the absolute max. And so we have outside investments. We put other money into those.
Yeah. So your money is growing while the dairy is also growing.
We're not 100% relying on, we're not
Right.
waiting, don't have 2 cents in the bank waiting, everything's hinging on this,
Yeah.
you mentioned in my bio that we've diversified. So
Yes.
we don't have all our eggs in one basket either. Our real estate's worth a lot of money here. And it's a blessing and a curse because, to your point, how do you transfer $20 million? It's really
Yeah.
difficult.
Well,
Say, but maybe we still a little bit to, if we have to get the retirement out. You know,
Well, we have seen families sever off 5 acres or whatever is legit for subdivision in your area. But ultimately, that's not the main goal. The main goal is to make sure the farm has the critical assets that it needs to be a really robust farm, and that the family, i.e. the founders, mom and dad, Walt and Ellen, and then also the fifth generation, have a decent amount of cash flow, not only for family living, Walt, also for debt capacity and debt servicing, right? And your margins in dairy have not been huge. And there's the other roller coaster, right? About how the economy of the dairy goes as well. So the next question I have is, where are you going to live?
Yeah, good question. So we right now, right now we live in a farm. One of my original or my original home farm has two farmhouses on it. I grew up in one and moved 200 feet. So I always tell people I didn't get very far in life, right?
Well, actually, but
So we live in that. And one of our family entities owns the dirt underneath it. And ultimately, though, we in 2019 Ellen and I bought a farm for the land mainly, and it has an 1840s farmhouse on it that we've mostly restored at this point. We live in an 1860s now, but we'll probably move there because it's 5 miles away. It's the farm, but it's not in the middle of everything.
so dad can leave work.
Yes, right.
You can leave Grand Central Station and go and enjoy your time.
And it's amazing what 5 miles does.
Yes.
Man, we sit there on the porch in the evenings and just rock and listen to nothing, and put a glass of wine. It's perfect.
Yeah. So we've done the same thing with a lake house that's only 16 minutes away. And I said to my husband, all I have to show for 45 years of marriage to is 86 grain bins. And I would really like a place to extract him so that he doesn't walk out his back door and see work with a capital W. So so the housing. And what about housing all your employees and your kids? What did you do for that?
So so Ellen and I are second marriage, and we have 5 children together. And uh, yeah, they're 27 to 37 in age, and they all let's see here, yeah, they basically all one the youngest, the daughter, still rents an apartment. The rest of them own their houses that are not
Wow.
related. They've all bought off the farm.
Yeah.
2 of them live real close, and then the others are within like a half an hour. So
Right. And so these are interesting conversations because people say, well, Elaine, why are you talking about housing? Well, I'm talking about people having their basic needs in. So we need money to pay down debt, money to buy groceries and diapers, and we need a decent place to live. And with 17 employees, you have lots of employees that need to have access to housing as well, too.
and most farms in Chester County where we're at come with a house. So yeah, we have several farm housing units. Ellen and I bought a house I don't know 5-6 years ago, just in town, that was a friend of ours. He was renting it out. He's had enough. I said, give me a price, and in 2 months we had it bought. And so we put a family in there. So we have options.
Right.
Most of our employees do live in our housing.
So you have 5 children between you. 3 of them are in the next gen with the business. The next question I have is, what have been your conversations about what everybody in the family needs to be successful? Because that's my definition of fairness. So talk to us about your fairness conversations.
Well, let me back up. So the three, Chase, Luke, and Andrew. Chase is actually an unrelated person.
Okay.
He came to us. His wife got a job in this area. He's actually from the opposite side of the state and grew up on a dairy farm. And we got to know him. We started working for us part-time, then full-time, and he's an all-in dairy farmer.
Great related party.
Yep. And then Luke is our nephew, my one sister's son. And the same group, kind of, he grew up on the farm basically, and went out and did other stuff and came back. And then Andrew's Ellen's youngest son, and he'd also worked 12 years in the hardscape business, and then decided to come back to the farm. So Jake is my son, and he's the one that does the more meats. And then Ellen's oldest son is also our office manager now. He does not have ownership at this point, but there may be a pathway in the future for him as well. So I just want to say that.
No, that's important, but it's also very helpful, Walt, that you're talking and describing how a blended family can work this out,
Yeah.
because many farm families are blended. And there's also a saying that we have in coaching is, where is it written that just because you weren't born into this family, like Chase, I think you mentioned, right, that you can't work in this farm business? And so how have you come to agreement on policies as to who gets hired and when and what their job descriptions are?
As
Like how
far
much?
as family?
Yeah, as far as well, as far as the whole business, as far as the Holstein
Yeah.
group altogether, because you're now an incorporated business. You've got different entities, you've got different people. I'm pretty sure they're like you said, in charge of the meats, in charge of the trucking, in charge of the cows. So
Sure.
you've got all these multiple enterprises going around.
Yeah, it's a lot of conversations, Ellen and I. I think I'm blessed. Ellen and I work really well together, and I always said it. We have 2 corporate meetings a day between us. We have coffee and tea in the morning and wine at night. So, we book it. I'm sure she gets tired of talking farming and business, but anyway.
Yeah. What's
But
your
I'm joking, but I'm not. I mean, at a lot of levels, we we do that, and we can do that, and so I think it's what feels good to each of us, what, makes sense, bouncing off, what are we seeing out of this person or that person? Do we think they're right fit or not right fit? And, it wasn't like we got to where we got overnight. It was, and
No, lots of trial and error and lots
yes,
of and also
the other 2 children that aren't involved at all, one's a police officer. He loves the farm, loves to hunt. He doesn't want to see it go anywhere, but it's not his passion to be here. And the daughter, same thing. She, very connected. She volunteers and does. We have a calving corner at the dairy Pennsylvania Farm Show every year. She does that, some other things, but she works in the medical field. So it's just, but so I think that not every child wants to be a farmer, and
no, and that's the question why I think when we talk about fairness, the question is not the cascading of wealth to the next generation, the same to each child or each benefactor or non-farm heir, or however you want to say that. It's what every person is desiring or navigating as to what they need to be successful. And you obviously made your employees successful too, because you have provided an opportunity for housing and whatnot for them. So, Walt, when when you have all these entities happening and all farms are complex systems, so there's usually like two or three or many more layers. Do you have a system of having monthly business meetings with the whole group, or do you do quarterly, or how do you make the difference between the actual operations of the dairy farm going tickety-boo versus the strategic plan for what the next 5 years and beyond might look like? How do you tease those out?
right, right. Um, so on the milk hauling, I'm in 50-50 partner with another farm up the road. We started that in 2006 because both shipped to Land O'Lakes, same co-op. We both had the same milk hauler at the time, and he decided to exit the business. He had 90 days to exit.
Oh man.
We were already buddies doing other stuff together.
Yeah.
And he and I got together and we said, you want to get into milk hauling business? And boom, next thing we got our advisors, we talked through it and stuff, but so that's how we got into that. And hey, like you start anything else, you have literally speed bumps and what have you. But overall, that's been really, really good for us. I mean, it
Yeah,
works
you're more vertically integrated that way.
right. And we're capturing some of those dollars, that we were, somebody else has got to make a living, and on that, and we're keeping that, and it's been great. We've been able to grow that business. We started with 1 truck and 2 trailers and a part-time guy, and now we have 3 trucks, 5 trailers, and it just keeps growing. So it's
And who's
say my that's
who's your mechanic? I'm just curious.
that's by committee.
Hey, Nat, we call them semis up here. You call them semis down there, but it's like keeping stuff on the road and keeping stuff moving is a whole other department.
Yes, it is. It is. It can be, and I'm not saying that we haven't been, out on the road at 9 o'clock at night because we blew a tire, 50
Yeah.
miles away. It's not a lot of fun sometimes, but
So how do you tease the difference between operationally and giving people their enterprises that they're in charge of and making them roll. Like I was watching you in the barn and you're in your parlor and all the amazing technology that you've invested in to really make good efficiency in that department and the young calves and all the systems that you put in place. But how 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 do you get clear, Walt, with your generation, with you and Ellen and your other business partners that are your age as founders, and then also include what the next generation sees as the growth? Because in succession planning, it's called the succession effect or successor effect, pardon me. So when we knew that our son was coming back to farm with us, Wes was going, oh, shoot, I should have bought more land 3 years ago. But he didn't know for sure if we were going to have a successor or not. But you have successors and you are going to the next generation. And what kind of pressure does that put on you strategically for growth?
Wow, what a question. Yeah, and I'm not sure I completely answered your last one either, but
That's okay.
internally we have what we call huddle meetings every Tuesday morning, 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And then we do corporate meeting like at least quarterly where
Okay, good.
and we also hired a financial guy to help us kind of retool all our books and stuff. Because what it was just
Yeah.
Ellen and I and my dad and mom are basically retired now, but we didn't need super complexity. Now I wanted something that these guys could say, here it is. We have a third party giving us quarterlies and helping us guide. And when I hired him, I said, you got to help me, help us get this to this level and help
Yeah.
us get this transition going. And he was part of that and continues to be part of that.
But that's perfect because the financial transparency, Walt, and the data that you have from all those systems that you put in place. So do you call him your chief financial officer? What's his
Yeah. And even though he's not,
he's outsourced.
contractor, he's got
Yeah.
on the payroll. Let's put it.
Subcontract.
Yeah. And he's been a great resource, and he has one-on-one conversations with these next gens, as we call them, and yeah, they're required to report stuff to him, and we work on budgeting together. And I mean, it's been tedious at times, and but it's a heck of a no. If they don't understand that, it's so easy for them to be really good in their operation area,
Yeah.
but you got to take that step back and look, and now we're really building on that 3 to 5 year plan and beyond. We're and it's I keep saying to these guys, this got to be your dream.
Yeah.
I'm here to help you, but
Passion.
you know
Yeah.
I've basically done, I've succeeded in what I want to do. But to your point about the pressure, my wife and I just bought 197 acres in April.
Yikes.
And because we wouldn't have done it if we didn't have an ex successors. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
You also did it knowing, Walt, what your numbers look like
Mhm.
and what your capacity looks like. And Brent Turner, who's a very good friend of mine from Montana, wrote a lovely book called Peace, Peace, Piece of Land, which is a story actually on how a family took in the guy's name was Mac as an advisor. And they made assumptions about the daughter not wanting to be part of the ranch, which is a wrong assumption. But the son and daughter, as siblings, both had different enterprises that they could be like. One could take care of marketing, the other person could do operations of the ranch, and there was a place for both of them. And so when I talk about discussing the undiscussable, I think a lot of farm families discount or don't embrace the skill sets that the kids who did go off to Philadelphia or Penn, wherever,
Yeah,
that
yep,
of the skills that they can still loop back into the family operation and make a beautiful thing happen for everybody.
yep.
Yeah.
Our oldest son was honestly of the five, I thought he was the least likely to ever come back. And he happened to show up here one day. He lived an hour away in Lancaster, just visiting us. And lunchtime, my wife was frustrated. And she goes, and he said, "Oh, I'm kind of looking for another job. This is what I'm in is kind of stale." And
Mm.
she was frustrated. She goes, "I'm ready to retire. You want my job?" Kind of just one of those. 2 days later, he calls us and says, "Were you serious?"
Yeah.
A
Right?
and then we got serious, and, like, within
Yeah.
6 weeks, he's working for us full time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we were actually had been kinda looking for somebody for over a year because she was getting to the point that, she's ready to start slowing down, she's ready to turn it over. I get that, but you also trying a small business, you want somebody you really can trust and have confidence in, and was he a accountant by trade or a bookkeeper? No, but he has the capacity to learn it, and he had the willingness to, and
Right.
the connection, and so
He's
yeah,
teachable, very teachable.
and yes, and he's he continues to grow beyond that. He's learning more and more about the farm operations every day, and we're having him out doing cross training and different things too. Because one, it helps him understand more the
What it
internal, hey, he's
includes.
paying the bills for and things like that. But
Yeah.
also, our goal was to cross train a lot because there's always that day when somebody's sick or doesn't show up or whatever. You need or something else. You need other hands on deck that can fill in, and
So I want to ask you how you and Ellen have beat procrastination. You didn't keep putting on making these plans, Walt. You said 18 months. You said you've used outside advisors, you had Zoom calls, you had appointments. I want to know why you didn't just push that away.
'cause I had a great model.
Okay.
My
Who is
parents,
good.
especially my dad, both of them are great. My mom passed away 3 years ago. Sorry. My dad's 90, still
Wow.
tends to the farm every day, eats lunch less than
Wow.
5 days a week. Um, sorry.
No, but what joy
Yeah.
you give him, Walt. What joy you give him because he showed you the way. He made a way for you, and
Yep.
they also didn't leave you in chaos.
Nope.
Yeah.
And they literally I was in college my senior year. They came visit me and they said, "We want to talk." Their manager of 20 years had just resigned.
Oh boy.
And my dad had a major health event a couple years prior to that, and almost didn't make it. Honestly,
Mhm.
got through that, and they were at the point. There's a 32-year gap between us and age, so not that they were old, but they were thinking about if I
Yeah.
were coming back, what was their plan,
Yeah.
And they said, "Are you coming home?" And I said, "Do you want me home?"
Mm.
I did. I had actually planned to go out and work for a couple years somewhere else out of college, but that
Yeah, we had planned that for Ian too, and it lasted for 4 months. Which again, if you hear Dr. Cole or Jolene Brown or any of the, Dick Whitman, all my good management friends from the US,
Yeah. Yep.
everybody will say it's always best if you have 5 years under your belt working for someone besides dad and mom.
Yep.
But sometimes life happens and that doesn't always work out the way you had planned.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and they really helped, um, take me in, and we figured out a plan, and we communicated, and my dad and I learned to agree to, or both of them, and with my parents, agreed to disagree early on. If we absolutely could not, we just parked it,
Yeah.
and come back, and then either compromise or whatever.
Create a different solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing I think that, I said the model, basically we started the same way. I started in the Walmore, and I think I said that already, but the they were pretty transparent. I have 2 older sisters and even younger. They're like, if we die, they had a will. They're like, if we pass, these are the people that are going to take over and manage the farm or figure it out, to get it, out. And you're, guardians and all that stuff till but like every 5 years they kind of talked about that. Well, as we got older, that evolved. And then
Then you could take that on.
and then once, I was in the business, that changed it again. So then they reworked everything again. And about every 5 years, they kind of worked it because my growth in the business kept growing. Things changed. We were never shy about getting outside advisors. I'll give
And therein lies
good.
another really good practice. Asking for help and getting people with skills that are different than yours, even like your CFO. I will never, ever do books or accounting because I'm not a detail person.
Yeah.
So over 30 years ago, I started writing a column for Grain News, and some of the folks listening to this who are dairy farmers have read my work in progressive dairy in Canada for 14 years. And that's because I used off-farm income as a way to hire out and outsource a bookkeeper because there's no way, just because I'm female and the spouse, that was my job.
Sure.
So I think everybody wants to be in the lane that matches their skill sets, right? And obviously your son had skills and he's trainable, and just because he didn't have an ag degree possibly didn't mean he wasn't going to be a good person to be part of the operation.
That's right.
I have another question that I think is a bull.
Okay.
how do you prevent divorce on the farm, or what have you done to mitigate the risk of divorce?
Well, obviously, I went through it,
Yeah. So
and
you know the consequences.
so did Ellen. And um,
So now,
we knew each other a little bit, but basically our divorces were about a year apart, and that's ultimate out short story. We ended up dating and getting together.
yeah,
But uh, that set us back from transferring it from my parents to me. I had to pay out
yeah,
equity, and again, it was conversations with my parents, and I give them credit. They basically waited 5 extra years to get, because
so
we couldn't afford to
yeah.
I couldn't afford to keep buying shares from them and pay out my ex. And that those are not easy conversations. And but I had to, I had to talk to the banker. I had to talk to the accountant. They all had there's no sense hiding it.
No, and Walt, I didn't mean to. I mean, I've only just met you today,
It's fine. Have it open.
but the thing is that I've had dairy farmers. I've had their fiancés with me on the phone, crying buckets, and they said, "Elaine, if he really loved me, he wouldn't be asking me to do this marriage contract." Now they call them inter-spousal agreements. That's the new term.
Yeah.
And they don't even call them prenups anymore. Anyway, whatever you want to call it, it's a policy. It's a risk management tool to protect the assets of the farm and to keep things contained should a divorce happen.
Mhm.
And people listening to this say, well, those young people, you just can't trust them. I go, hey, folks, you got to understand the big undiscussable now is not young folks. It's gray divorce. It's people my age in their early 70s approaching who say, I didn't sign up for this. I can't do this anymore. And nothing seems to be changing around this farm. So I am going to follow Oprah and have the life I've always wanted. And so I think that's the other thing too, Walt, that we have to be very astute about is putting the risk management tools in place to protect what you've spent the last, decade, century, like 1909, that was a while ago, of all this that's been created, right? And obviously you learned the lesson of patience and capacity to service debt, also having to navigate your obligations to your first spouse. So it just sort of I just don't understand people who think that by pretending this isn't happening, it's just going to all go away.
Right. Right. It's yeah, and it's not easy. And I'm not really a conflict person. I don't embrace it. I typically want to avoid it, but
But I think you've been taught good conflict, Walt, because just what you've said, your parents taught you to create solutions. So they created solutions for you to have the capacity to buy them out. Your parents were planners, so they updated their wills every 5 years. They created the ability or the perspective also to put themselves in the other person's shoes. I wonder what it feels like to be our son who's going through a divorce and yet desperately wants to keep this business intact. So what adjustments? How can we adapt? How can we reach out for good advice, which you've also done with your CFO? So what I've just described, folks, are 5 really positive conflict behaviors, Walt, that you're already doing. Creating solutions, reaching out, expressing emotions, adapting, and putting yourself in the other person's shoes. And so that I think is a really big learning for agriculture for 2026. And if I could have my dreams come through this year, it would be for ag people to sit down and start talking about what they truly want and know that conflict is not a bad thing. It can bring lots of clarity if you grab the bull by the horns, literally, and don't keep procrastinating. Because I've often said procrastination and conflict avoidance is killing agriculture. So have we solved all the world's problems in the last 45 minutes?
took a good stab at it.
Anyway, I just want to thank you for coming today and breaking up your day to spend time with me. And we want this podcast to go far and wide over the next 30 days so that a lot of dairy farmers in Pennsylvania will sign up for the Dairy Summit. And I'll also be there to do coach on call in the hall and talk to dairy farmers one-to-one and have some good conversations. And in the meantime, for those of you who are milking cows while you're listening to this, that's the beauty of this podcast is we have a dairy family that's not that far away from you, Walt, where the mom listens first. And then if she thinks her son should listen to it, then she gives them the link. So I know that there are other dairy barns that are going to be listening to this podcast. So of all the things that you could tell the audience today about having success going forward, what's the one thing that you think's most important?
Oh boy, there's a yeah. Um, I we give a lot of tours, and I get
Yeah.
young people, and I often say, they're coming in there from all different parts of the world and backgrounds and everything, and I'm like, follow your passion. You're right at the tip of the tip of the iceberg of where you can go, and I think that if I've done that. I literally told my parents when I was 6 years old I'm going to come home and go to college, get an ag degree, and come home and take over the farm, and I followed my passion, and I think if you do that, and you just surround yourself with fantastic people, and what you do, I guess I've never been afraid to ask questions and not and admit that I don't know, and get the people that help you out. And that's, we had a profit team, I called for years, and man, they were like my board of directors, and,
Yes.
and fantastic, all these folks that just brilliant people that had their specialties, but man, you get them around the table and there wasn't much we couldn't tackle. And, it just, and I just, don't, and I think that's my biggest thing. You got to communicate, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't feel like you're on an island.
Right.
I'm in a couple
And
of
it,
peer groups. That's just fantastic too. You realize really quickly that we're in the same trenches, and what can we
you don't have to reinvent the wheel too when you're in those peer support groups because
absolutely.
you get to learn from their mistakes and they've just cut your learning curve by a significant amount.
Absolutely. And, and you have a good group like that that's transparent with each other and willing to help each other. And it's just, that's hard to beat.
Yeah.
Um,
Good.
and I'd really look forward to meeting you in person at the dairy
Yeah,
site.
it'll be fun. It'll be good. Let me know what you want me to bring down from the north.
Okay.
And
No snow.
yeah, I'll try not to bring the snow. Actually, we had rain here today, which is really odd. I also wanted the podcast listeners to know that on our coaching team, Lydia Carpenter, who does our one-to-one coaching and manages the coaching practice, also speaks Spanish. And so does Crisol Gonzalez, who's on our team, and she's in a dairy farm actually in northern Mexico. And so I know that there are a lot of Spanish-speaking employees and managers on dairy farmers in the US and in Canada and other places. And just want people to know that if you need more resources in another language, they help with that too. So thanks so much, Walt, for your time today, and I look forward to seeing you at the beginning of February in Hershey, Pennsylvania at the Dairy Summit. And folks, how you can help us out is just share this far and wide and subscribe. And I want to give a shout out to all the people who still use laptops to watch YouTube because we've also got a pretty healthy audience there too. So we'll say goodbye for now and until the next time. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be back with another podcast. And keep listening and growing, folks. And remember that it's your farm, it's your family, but there's lots of good choices out there. And I hope you all can use these tools that we've shared today to help you find harmony through understanding. And go and find a dairy cow talking stick. That's your next action. Bye for now. See you later, Walt. Bye.